If you're anything like me, you may feel like we're living through some of the most turbulent times ever. We seem to hear about wars, terrorist attacks, natural disasters, politics, and pandemics every single day. And it seems like the future doesn't hold any promise of change. All of this negativity can be extremely tiring, which is why it's nice to know that there are places you can go to forget about your problems for a while. Welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be taking a look at another narcissist who thought they could get away with everything. Narcissism is something that can happen to anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, or religion. So let's see how this individual got exposed for their actions. This is the story of a daughter's betrayal, a mother's heartbreak, and a shocking case of greed that tore a family apart. It begins in Ellesmere Port, England, with a woman named Luana Dougherty. On the surface, she seemed like the perfect person to look after her aging mother, Margaret Trimmer. Luana was 50 years old, a mother of 3, and she worked in the care sector, dealing with people who suffered from dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Her own mother, Margaret, was in her 80s and struggling with Alzheimer's. The family believed that by placing Margaret in Luana's care, she would be safe, comfortable, and surrounded by the kind of compassion only a daughter could provide. What no one knew at the time was that Luana was about to betray that trust in a way so cold and calculating that even the judge in her case later called it selfishness on an epic scale. Margaret had lived a full life, but by the time she reached her 80s, her illness had taken away much of her independence. Her children agreed that she should sell her family home, which brought in £370,000. The money was supposed to guarantee that Margaret could have the best possible care in her final years. It was a way of making sure that her needs would always be met, no matter how her condition progressed. Luana, as part of the arrangement, received £125,000 as her share of the proceeds. The rest was kept in Margaret's account, specifically intended to cover her care. The family placed their trust in Luana, not just as a daughter, but as someone with professional experience in the care sector. They believed she was the ideal person to safeguard both her mother's well-being and her financial future. But almost immediately after moving in with her mother, Luana began accessing the money. Instead of focusing on her mother's health, her appointments, or her comfort, she saw the large sum sitting in Margaret's account as an opportunity for herself. She downloaded a banking app onto her mother's phone, giving her complete control over the funds. Over a period of just 4 days, she transferred £20,000 a day into her own account. £80,000 disappeared in less than a week, and she didn't stop there. She siphoned off money over months and years until more than £216,000 was gone. The way she exploited her mother's illness, the ease with which she carried out the fraud, led investigators and the judge alike to describe it as being like taking candy from a baby. The money, which should have been used to provide her mother with dignity and proper care, was instead squandered. Luana spent thousands of pounds on her Staffordshire Bull Terrier-type dogs. She bought furniture. She attempted to launch a dog breeding business. She posted photos on Facebook showing herself on holiday in India with a male companion, posing with elephants, enjoying the kind of luxuries her mother's money was supposed to provide for her care. She even bragged to her own son that she was preparing to put down a £60,000 deposit on a house. In her mind, she was living the high life, propped up entirely by her mother's declining health and stolen savings. But greed has a way of exposing itself. It was her bragging that ultimately led to her downfall. Her relatives began asking questions. Why was Luana suddenly spending so much? How was she affording holidays, dogs, and talk of a house deposit? Concerned, they made inquiries with Margaret's bank. What they discovered was shocking. Out of all the money that had once been in Margaret's account, only £10,000 remained. The rest had been drained away. The revelation left the family devastated. Margaret's daughter, Sandra Clayton, later described how heartbroken their mother was when she learned of the betrayal. Margaret, already vulnerable and struggling with Alzheimer's, was left anxious and distressed. Sandra's words to police painted a picture of a mother who had been exploited in the cruelest way possible. She explained that when Margaret sold her home, the family had agreed Luana would be her caregiver. Because of her background in the care sector, it seemed like a sensible and safe decision. They had trusted her, but that trust was misplaced. Sandra admitted that they felt foolish for believing in her, because almost immediately, Luana began amassing the money for herself. Sandra revealed that during the 18 months Margaret lived with Luana, she received no medical appointments and no diagnosis. Luana repeatedly told the family that Margaret was attending appointments, but it was a lie. Instead of focusing on her mother's health, she was focused on draining her bank account. Sandra said that the money could have been used to provide the best possible care for her mother, giving her dignity and comfort. Instead, because of the theft, the family had no choice in the type of care home Margaret would be moved into. They were forced to rely on the local authority to choose, while they themselves had to top up £100 a week for her care. The emotional toll was enormous, but so was the financial one. And throughout it all, Sandra said, Luana never once asked how her mother was, never inquired where she lived, never offered to pay back a single penny. There was no remorse, no concern, only silence. When the case went to court, the details shocked even the judge. At Chester Crown Court, Luana admitted to fraud by abuse of position. The judge, Richard Conley, told her that what she had done demonstrated an uncaring and callous attitude. He reminded her that she had been trusted by her family to look after her mother precisely because of her experience in the care sector, but that trust had been entirely misplaced. He described how she had exploited that position of trust, siphoning off her mother's money for her own selfish desires, saying that her selfishness was on an epic scale. He said it was staggering to think that someone who had defrauded a vulnerable person of their own life savings was still working in the care sector. And for her crimes, Luana Dougherty was sentenced to 4 years in prison. But even after the sentencing, the case wasn't over. The following year, she was brought back to Chester Crown Court for a proceeds of crime hearing. The court heard that she had benefited by more than £156,000. Yet when the time came to pay it back, her only asset was a second-hand Vauxhall Insignia. That car will be sold for an estimated £4,000, a pathetic fraction of the fortune she stole. If the sale falls short, the court will reconvene to agree on a lesser amount. It's a far cry from the lavish lifestyle she once flaunted. The emotional damage to the family, however, can never be measured in pounds or assets. Sandra spoke of how deeply her mother had been hurt. She had trusted her daughter to care for her in her final years, and instead, that trust was shattered. Instead of comfort, she was left with distress. Instead of dignity, she was left with the consequences of betrayal. The money that was meant to secure her a place of safety was taken away, leaving her dependent on the choices of the local council. Sandra made it clear that Luana had shown no care, no concern, and no remorse. She had used her mother for what she could get and discarded her once the money was gone. This story is a painful reminder of how greed can twist relationships beyond recognition. It shows how trust, once broken, can leave wounds that never fully heal. Luana Dougherty's betrayal wasn't just about the money. It was about the bond between a mother and a daughter, a bond that should have been rooted in love, compassion, and loyalty. Instead, it was replaced with callousness and deceit. In the end, the law caught up with her. She lost her freedom. She lost her reputation. And the lavish lifestyle she tried to build crumbled into nothing more than a second-hand car to be auctioned off in court. But the real tragedy is not what Luana lost, what her mother lost. The chance to live her final years with comfort, dignity, and the support of her family was taken away, and it can never be returned. We hope that this story has given you insight into the damaging effects of narcissism. Narcissistic individuals are capable of destroying families and hurting people they're supposed to love. It is important to recognize the signs of narcissism so that you can protect yourself and your loved ones. We want to thank you for watching this video and hope that you've gained some valuable insights. Please don't forget to leave a like if you found it helpful.